Hey everyone, welcome back to Brewbound Frontlines, our weekly live stream meetup with brewery owners and executives to discuss how they're adjusting their businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Justin Kendall. I am the editor of Brewbound, and as always, I am joined on this socially distant social hour by my colleague, Jess Infante. What's up, Jess?
Hey, Justin. Not much. How are you?
About the same, since we've been talking all day. So
True.
I like how we pretend that we don't talk.
I know. I like how you always thank me for being here every week.
I'm afraid you're not going to come back. So that's the biggest fear. So today, let's get serious here, I guess. We're bringing together the founders and owners of 4 craft breweries, 2 from Georgia and 2 from Missouri, that are operating in states that have already begun reopening. How are they approaching their reopening plans? Here to tell us are Jeff Heck, the co-founder and CEO of Monday Night Brewing in Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
My pleasure. Really glad to be here.
We've also got Chris Herron, co-founder and CEO of Creature Comforts Brewing in Athens, Georgia. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Justin.
We also have Libby Kreider, the co-owner of Second Shift Brewing in St. Louis, Missouri. Thank you for being here, Libby.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much.
And we've got Bryce Shafter, the founder of Cinderblock Brewery in Kansas City, Missouri, somewhere that I'm very familiar with, someone I'm also very familiar with. Thanks for joining us, Bryce.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank you all again. I know you're so busy. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to join us. And before we get rolling here, we are accepting audience questions. So please text your questions to 617-336-8560. That number again is 617-336-8560. Send the questions. We'll ask them as we go. So one more bit of housekeeping, a cheap plug for next Thursday's event. We'll be talking e-commerce with Rabobank analysts Burkhard Neeson and Jim Watson, Drizzly's Director of Consumer Insights, Liz Paquette, and GoPuff's Director of Alcohol, Randy Ornstein. So we'll be here 3 p.m. Eastern next Thursday. This is kind of our standing date together. So feel free to come on back to brewbound.com. We'll be here. So let's dig in. By this weekend, 48 states will have started to reopen in some manner. Georgia and Missouri were among the first states to begin allowing businesses to reopen, albeit in a limited capacity. Despite your states opening up, each of you have taken a cautious approach to reopening your businesses. I'd like to start by getting a picture of how each of you are currently operating. So if you could give us a quick snapshot, I'd appreciate it. I'll start with Libby.
So we are taking a very cautious approach. There is no date that we're setting to open up. We're continuing to do curbside and pickup, which is done really well by us, and we're really thankful for it. But as far as opening up, we're super small, and I am worried that there's going to be a second outbreak. And so we have basically made a proclamation that we're not going to open up as far as into maybe late summer, early fall, until we feel fairly safe for both the consumers and our employees. Our employees are our most valuable asset, so I want them to feel comfortable. And right now they don't feel comfortable opening up to the public. So.
Right on. That's totally understandable. Bryce, I want to get a picture of how Cinderblock is operating at the moment. Can you give us that picture?
Sure. So we have been doing curbside as well as delivery only right now, with kind of the understanding that the opening of Missouri was coming upon us. We started making shifts with the potential to open, and we've not set a date yet, but what I am a firm believer in is reconfiguring and training behaviors on how it would be like when we're open. So the current staff that we do have on hand, they are getting used to how our table configurations and how our flows might be. That also gives us a good opportunity to understand where we should change things. Even though we don't have a set date, it's given us a great opportunity to have a lot of team discussions about things we would change. Say we want to open up in 2 weeks, we'd be prepared to open up in 2 weeks. And so I think that's where I just kind of am watching day by day on what's happening.
Jeff, I want to get a picture from Monday night as well. How are you operating at the moment?
Yes. So right now we are continuing to operate our wholesale business as is. So we have, that's the majority of our sales. On our tap room front, we have 2 tap rooms in the city of Atlanta, and one of those is closed completely. The other, we are doing curbside pickup and sales, which has been really encouraging to see the number of guests that have continued to come by and pick up beer to go. We've kind of built out, we've been able to open for in a limited capacity for a couple weeks. So we've used this, but we decided not to. So we've used the time to really think about how to open in a phased approach. We are fortunate enough to have a lot of outdoor space at both of our tap rooms. So our initial opening plan, we expect actually to begin reopening one of our 2 locations, the garage, which is our barrel aged and sour facility, this weekend with only outdoor seating and limited capacity. So I actually came from a training where we walked through all that with our team, and so we're excited to see how that goes. But the tomorrow will be the first day we do any draft beer service at either of our locations. Right on. And Chris, where are you guys at Creature Comforts?
Yeah, we're, I think, kind of similar to where Bryce is and kind of the others. We have a drive-through that we've been able to implement, and that's we've been really encouraged by the support from the community to come straight on, and that's just kind of like a touchless, contactless, like everyone's doing. And then we have no plans for when we will start opening. We do have a pretty good size outdoor space, but we haven't set any dates, or we're just kind of playing it by ear. But kind of similar to Bryce, we plan to be ready to open within about a week. We just aren't suggesting that we're going to open or anything, but we've been doing a lot of work to say, if we were to open, how would we do it? And so our goal is within a week to kind of know what we would do. And that's kind of where we're at right now, but no firm plans on when we'll actually open.
Great. Really interesting to hear what capacity you guys are all open to and what thought process went into that. Jeff, I know you and I have chatted about this, and Monday Night conducted a survey of its customers' willingness to return to brewery tap rooms. 3/4 of respondents said they don't plan to return to tap rooms until at least June, which is pretty far off compared to when restrictions were lifted in Georgia. So how did that survey inform the way that you're approaching reopening at Monday Night?
Yeah, a few things. One, I was actually encouraged to see that a lot of consumers are going to take a more cautious approach. So we are going to, I think if we had seen that people were just like ready to get out, I think it actually may have slowed us down a little bit in terms of reopening, because we're not just relying on the restrictions that have been put in place, or not put in place or lifted by the government, but also on our own research and what we're hearing from public health officials. So in a lot of ways, it's actually encouraging to know what consumers value in terms of safety, and how that kind of matches up with public health officials. So it's really helped us to think about what I think we've thought about it in 2 ways. One, what are the safety precautions that we've done our own research and study to know what is actually makes people safer, so we can care for our own team and for our guests. And 2, what makes people feel safer, and what do they think is important? Because we have to consider that too. So it really informed our kind of phased opening plan, and that we've put in place. The only caveat I would say is that survey really just tells us how people are feeling at one specific moment in time, and people are notoriously bad at predicting their own behavior in the future. So I think it's been less about how we build like our expectations for volume 2-4 months from now, and more like how do we engage with people where they are today and what their own expectations of the future, tell them about how they're feeling right now.
Yeah, I know, we find that what people say in a survey doesn't always match up with, what they do and how they act in reality. So, I mean, speaking of your expectations for volume and stuff like that, what are your expectations right now? Do you think you'll see a bunch of people flocking to you guys as soon as they can? Or do you think they're going to be a little bit more cautious?
I think people are primarily going to be cautious. I mean, we're in a metro area where people we are a little denser. We have had a good amount of activity of the virus. Fortunately, it's shown a decline for the last week or two. But you just never know. To Libby's point, you just never know when that's going to change. So I would be really surprised if we see a big surge. I hope we don't. I hope we see just a handful of people who are respecting each other, respecting our team, and because if not, then we're going to have to sort of reevaluate what the right approach. I've told our team, look, we could open for one shift and then completely change everything we're doing. So we're making our best guess based on a set of completely unknown set of circumstances. So we're just gonna have to watch and see and adapt really quickly.
Makes a lot of sense. Chris, what are you guys thinking for Athens? Expecting to see a lot of people, or do you think they're mostly staying home still?
Yeah, I think we still are mostly staying home. If school was still in, then I would be a little more concerned. But given that it's summer, it's actually the slow time of year in Athens, and you have a lot more of just the locals who live here, and so I tend to think that even if there have been a couple of restaurants that have opened, and you haven't seen large crowds going there, and I think a lot of them have done it in pretty good ways, and they've been respectful, and it's been a chance for us to see how people are doing things. But generally, the state's been open, but people are still making what I'm seeing is generally pretty smart decisions. We had a chance yesterday for a guild call, and one of the breweries was on there who had opened, sort of gone back and changed their model a little, and they said it's been a good turnout, but it has definitely been very respectful, and that they've it's not like it used to be, and that 99% of the people have been extremely thoughtful in the way that they utilize their space. So that was kind of promising to hear. But yeah, I would have been a little more concerned if this was hot and heavy in the middle of college time, and what that group of folks how they might feel about it.
Oh, it makes a ton of sense. Definitely adds a lot more context to what you guys have going on. Libby, in Missouri, what's the feeling like from your customers? What are you hearing?
From our particular customers, I feel like they're supporting our decision to stay off until we feel comfortable. Missouri as a whole is pretty divided. We're definitely in a more dense population, very close to Illinois, which obviously has a bigger outbreak than we do right now. But I mean, going back to Chris's point, we wanted to be responsible. If we saw establishments that are reopening and people being respectful of that, then we would feel more optimistic about reopening. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that. We've seen a lot of people taking advantage of it, not putting any particular business under the bus, but like people just not being responsible. And we haven't seen declining numbers. We continue to see growing numbers, and that's really concerning. So in Missouri in particular, I can't speak outside of the St. Louis area that I know for, but the rest of the state has opened up, and it seems like people are eager to get out. And for me personally, that's just very concerning. So
Definitely. Bryce, what have your customers been telling you?
So I think I agree with everyone that's we have had a lot of respect for our decision not to reopen immediately. We have a very close-knit group of, I guess you'd call regulars. That's probably the most painful group that we aren't able to see, that our bartenders and all of our staff have actual relationships with. And they are constantly stopping by and doing carryouts, and they're all just like wanting to have a beer so much just to sit back and talk. And, you think about that small group of folks, and you're like, that's not that many people. But it's the scariness of, is it a snowball effect? And all of a sudden, you're the few places that are open, and then that happens. And I think we were in a little bit of a unique situation where the county that we were in opened roughly almost 2 weeks before the major metropolitan area of Kansas City. And we literally are across the bridge from Kansas City. So we've decided not to do that, just for the fact that we are seeing probably quite a bit of migration into our area or our county because of that. It's a location. I do think there's a level of pent-up demand with this. We get a lot of phone calls throughout the day wondering if we're going to be open. And I know people want to come out. It's just the scariness of how many people might show up, and how do we manage that appropriately?
Yeah. So, I mean, Bryce, sticking with you, you have a pretty long checklist of things you're doing to reopen. And I know you and Justin have talked about this, but can you share with us what you're doing to keep both employees and customers safe?
Sure. So early on, as soon as we started seeing this moving in this direction, even in the January timeframe, we began talking through what type of protections from a PPE perspective. So both gloves and masks, I made early purchases and hand sanitizing stations where they're still available, and those were throughout the brewery. And even with our delivery services, we enabled our delivery individuals to have the appropriate mask and glove and sanitizing products throughout that. And then moving into where we look at the transition for potential reopening, I decided on flow diagrams, multiple drawings throughout our building about capacity and seating, knowing that we work in a little under a 10,000 square foot internal space. Ceiling height is different in both areas, and I like to take that into account from a flow perspective on the air itself. We've installed UVC lighting systems within our air ducting systems to basically sterilize the air as best as possible. It's not 100%, but just so we're not recirculating potential viral infections throughout the facilities. And then also just looking at our exit scenarios so that we understand we have one entry point, one exit point. From a staffing perspective, we're making sure that we have someone that can attend throughout the building at all times to account within the facility, and then also helping to control flow and spacing. I think that's a big part of it. We've got still a dedicated curbside, and these are all, as I talk through this scenario, these are the behavioral changes I talked at the start that we're practicing so that we're ready to reopen. We're not at that point, but we simply having these types of, I hate to use the word drills, but getting down to that behavior so that we're ready to do that is what we've been talking through and what we're doing, so that we're able to know that once we hit capacity, or maybe we just don't see a good flow in the building, we shut down the doors as far as putting at capacity signs up. We have the retractable barricade so that we can close off the entrance and only have exits available. Those are the type of discussions we're having. And I think understanding that the public and our staff are safe and healthy is at the foremost, the thing that we're trying to drive for here. And I think once talking through all of these different scenarios, that's kind of what drove us to the fact that it's not time to reopen yet. I think we need to continue to see how this plays out. And I think Libby said it earlier about a staggered reopening. And I think that's what we continue to talk through. And you say, are we going to be reopened to our normal hours? Now we're back to, if we reopen, it's looking like Fridays and Saturdays. We have a large outdoor space ourselves. I think that's another factor that we have to consider. And then just making sure that we're accommodating for the behaviors of our customers. And one of those behaviors is crowding. One of those behaviors is spaces that have certain capacity limits, but there's spillover from a flow perspective to receive drinks and such, and there's an opportunity for crowding. Those are the things that we're trying to flow chart and diagram out what those might be. And I think unless we can mitigate those different types of issues, then it just is not the time yet for us.
Jeff, you mentioned that you guys are looking to open up for the first time your outdoor space tomorrow. What's on your checklist of things that you wanted to have in place to get that going?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost was the work to really understand what the most important things to put in place are. So the feedback from that customer survey was hugely important, but also our own research with again guidance from the CDC and other public health officials. So as we were able to, we wanted to build a plan around that so that we felt really confident that it was clear and executable with our team. And that took some time. So we brought everybody in, all of our taproom staff. I have a picture that I would show you if I was able, of everybody sitting in masks 6 feet apart in the garage, which has 22-foot ceilings and fans, etc. But to kind of run through that. So I think what I really needed to feel like was we had a really clear plan on what to do, that we really knew exactly what was going to happen when we opened the doors, and then frankly be willing to like make adjustments based on what we saw. So.
Right on. And Libby and Chris, I know you both aren't quite to the point of being comfortable opening up yet, but when you are ready to make that decision, what do you want on your checklist of, I guess, as far as space goes within your place, PPP or PPE for your employees? What are sort of the things that you're flow charting for your businesses? And I'll start with Libby.
So we're kind of feeling it out day by day. So it's been a definitely learning curve process for us, seeing what we thought would be best for us, and then seeing what the customer driven demand is as far as like drive up, pick up, delivery service. We've seen that delivery service has fallen off quite a bit, which means that a lot of people are doing the pickup service. When we've seen, going back to what Bryce said, we have a lot of regulars that just want to see your face. And they want that one-on-one. And so kind of shifting from that drive up only contactless curbside to, we're basically going to start building a different beer garden. We're taking half of our parking lot and doing a larger beer garden from the very small, minute one we had, and trying to, sorry if I'm not being very coherent right now, trying to basically, I'm sorry. I'm really not quite sure. Like we're in a position, I feel like in Missouri, where we're not quite sure what's happening, because we do see numbers rising. And so we want to open up as quickly as possible, but we have no plans to. So we're basically going to expand our beer garden. We have no plans to open up anybody inside. And what it would take was be declining numbers for 2 weeks in a row, and some sort of validation from a reputable source that there is a vaccination that has been in place and sees promise. So
I think that's completely fair, because right now there's a lot of speculation, and until, and I just leaned in the camera like I was told not to, but there's a lot of speculation because we really don't know what's going to happen. You all can open up and, 3 weeks later, we could see a surge, or 2 months, or however down the road. And so I think you all are in a very unenvious position of trying to navigate this and figure this out and make a decision that you might have to walk back, in weeks or months. And I think that's an entirely difficult position to be in. And so I think it's fair that you don't have all the answers right now.
We had to pivot pretty quickly, 90 degrees, and then another 90 degrees with our business model really quickly once we realized what was going on. And my position right now is I'm looking to see what that additional 90 degrees will be, what we need to do as far as what the unseen may be, what we need to do to pivot to make sure that we're staying responsible, we're staying up and making sure that my business stays open, but also trying to look out for the unknown, which is, it's kind of scary. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. So
Chris, when you're projecting where Creature of Comforts is going to be, or what it's going to look like when it reopens, are you able to see that at this point, or is that still something that's so far off in the future that you're unable to sort of articulate what that is yet?
No, I mean, I was sort of saying we're hoping to be ready, have our plan finalized and have done walkthroughs and everything within a week. So we have a pretty good idea of what it would look like. We're just not committing to any sort of, hey, we're definitely opening by this date. So, for us, a lot of the stuff that everyone said, right? So certainly there's drastically different sanitation, PPE, masks, gloves, things like that, particularly within working, spaces. We used to be more of a bar setting, kind of walk up to the bar, everybody just, crowds up to a bar and gets beer. We're likely to move to a, more of a table service model, where, because that we can't really control those lines very well. And that's one of the areas that we've identified as a risk, versus getting people to tables. It also is a risk for us with all of our employees. If at the old bar model, we'd sort of have 4 or 5 people back behind the bar serving the customers, which puts them all in really close proximity to each other and doesn't really allow them, our staff, the ability to distance as much as we'd like, versus table service sort of allows us to spread people out with a couple people working, pouring beer, a couple people moving beers to the tables, a couple other people that are actually taking orders. And so it actually allows us to spread our staff out from each other as well. And then one of the other things we've been doing this for a while now, but we've had shift teams. We took all of our staff and we broke them into different work groups so they don't overlap with each other. So there's, we've got 4 different teams that operate now, and they always work with the same people. And that's been one of those, just to try to protect from, if somebody were to, come down with COVID, we would be able to sort of know, like, okay, this team has all interacted with each other. All of them need to be able to quarantine, but we would still be able to have other teams that wouldn't have to necessarily. And so that's been one of the other things is, thinking about that staffing, which is not something we used to do. We didn't used to think about sort of these work teams. So, there's a lot of stuff we've leaned into sort of CDC as a guideline for, okay, this is the bare minimum, right? We need to do at least what they're saying. And then, as I think some of the others have touched on, there's also a feel for what our employees feel safe with and what are the customers. And that's been one of the things in all of this is everybody's in a different environment with a different set of customers who behave different ways, with employees who feel differently. And there isn't this is how you do it. This is going to be a brewery by brewery thing. And it totally depends on where they're at, what their customer base is like, the type of experience they can create. And that's one thing I went on our guild call yesterday, just kind of tried to encourage everyone to, let's not be, I can't believe they're doing this, they're opening, I can't believe they're not opening, I can't believe this, because it's just, everybody's under completely different circumstances. There isn't, this is more than ever one of these things where we all have to kind of make our own decision. And at the same time, like, I'm so glad to be a part of an industry that's as collaborative as craft beer is, because, we are able to get on calls, and everybody, like, Jeff and them have been incredibly helpful. They shared all the results of their study. They had some SOPs for how they were going to open and shared that with all of the guild, and so they've done a great job of preparation, and then have been just an incredible resource for the rest of us in Georgia. So, hats off to Jeff and Monday Night for that.
That's awesome that you guys are all working together. And Chris, everything you just told us about how you're thinking about making changes to taproom service dovetails great with this audience question that just came in. So shout out to whoever sent this one in. I'm going to plug the text line for everybody watching at home. If you want to ask a question, you can shoot a text to 617-336-8560. So, this question, certainly all of you guys could answer it, but for those who plan to open soon, is there any hesitation to use glassware? Is anyone leaning towards single-use plastics? Chris, let's stick with you.
At this time, we haven't. We're going to use the single-use menus if we do that. We are planning to still be able to use glassware and following similar protocols that we have before, where obviously everything's running through a sanitary wash before getting reused. So at this time, we haven't explored the idea of single-use cups for everybody.
Bryce, what about you guys at Cinderblock?
We purchased 12,000 plastic cups right out of the gate. So it was under advisement from a good physician friend of mine that the best likelihood for not having anything occur, whether it's a variance in our sanitation process because it's a dishwasher, but just on the safe side, and also the lack of handling by the employee, so they don't have to handle glassware either, would be just to have the customer dispose of the glassware, which that also somewhat, you think of a chain reaction that caused us, when we started contemplating, we would need double the amount of recycling bins within the facility just to handle that. And it's unfortunate that we have to go that direction, but that was just, for me, the easiest way to negate any opportunity for cross-contamination.
It makes a lot of sense. So given that you've consulted, your physician friend, and what other sources of information or authority have you been consulting to make more decisions? By
physician friend, he means his wife.
I've been calling my husband my quarantine buddy, so.
Yeah. I think everybody's saying CDC and the WHO make some of the best guidelines. I think the challenge for all of us is how do you apply those guidelines to localities and the guidelines that they set out as well. I think OSHA comes out with probably some of the most stringent guidelines on top of the CDC guidelines that for protection of employees is one of the best ones to follow, and probably one of the most challenging because of the level of expectations that they have. So that's kind of been my path. Somewhere CDC is the golden rule, and then anything above that, I think, is just that much better.
Yeah, we kind of follow the exact same in terms of OSHA being, okay, let's, and then some of our local municipalities have put even stricter or just best practices that we see others doing that we say, you know what, that's even better, and that can be sort of verified. So yeah, I think it's a good time to err on the side of caution.
Jeff, I know you guys put a question in the survey asking consumers like what they were turning to for information. Did anything in there surprise you?
Yeah, I mean, what surprised us the most was how little they were looking to the state and federal government for guidance and perspective on when it was safe to kind of get back out there, and how high a value they placed on the CDC and the World Health Organization. That wasn't super surprising. What was surprising, though, is that the number two was when businesses that I respect reopen. And so I think for us as kind of as institutions, as craft breweries that have a deep connection to our local communities, people are looking to us not just as like business people, but they're looking to us as citizens and community members and leaders in the neighborhoods and in cities and communities that we operate in, with a sense of like trust that we need to steward well. And so I think that means we have to, we are there's, which is crazy, right? In some ways, in some ways it's crazy. Like that people look to like a craft brew. We're like a motley crew industry of people who have raided our 4 days to go, build our own, to sort of build the dream. But it's also like a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to have that kind of like burden of responsibility and leadership. And I think every single one of the craft breweries around the country has a responsibility to do their homework and to lead by example. And to Chris's point, like we're all gonna have we're gonna operate in different contexts, and different and in different communities and with people who have different needs and different risks levels. So we need to be really thinking about our neighbors throughout all of this. As we lead. So, I mean, personally, I've done a tremendous amount of I like to look at like the like academic papers themselves, right? Like I've never spent more time looking at public health academic papers around like the efficacy of various face mask types. I can tell you single ply cloth is only 30% effective at blocking particles that below about 0.07 microns, which I would not have been able to tell you 4 months ago or 4 weeks ago. And surgical masks are just about as good as N95 masks. But those are the kinds of things. It sounds crazy, but if we really care about our people and we really care about our guests, then we need to actually do the research. And I think that collaborating across breweries is a great way to share that information. Like we're not public health officials. But we need to rely on the work that others are doing to make informed and thoughtful decisions to keep everybody safe.
Hey, Libby, where are you guys looking to take your cues at Second Shift?
We take it a lot from just customer feedback, guest feedback. We do a lot of our marketing because we are so small on social media. And we're also taking cues, like alluding to both to Chris, Bryce, and Jeff, from each other. We're in constant communication with a lot of our brewery friends. What are they planning on doing? What are they comfortable with? Basically, it re-encourages us that what we're feeling is not alone. What we're wanting to do is not alone. And so we're not even planning on using single-use cups. We're can only, which is a completely different business model for us. I mean, draft was our bread and butter forever, but until we can figure out a safe way to properly serve our beer in the way that we want, when we do finally reopen, it's going to be can service only. But we're taking our cues from, some of my best friends own craft breweries. The godmother to my children owns a St. Louis craft brewery, and constant communication of where they feel comfortable with. And then as far as our guests, being open, being honest, checking in with them every day, whether it be through our email subscription or with just social media, like how are you doing? How are you feeling? What is going on? Just being interactive with them. It's good for us. It's good for them. I mean, people are home alone all day, or not home alone, but they're home all day wanting to interact. And that's one way we found that has really been beneficial for us, is reaching out and interactions through social media. So,
Jeff, I've got a question on, I guess, doing the math of reopening, because running at 20 to 30% of occupancy, I wonder how sustainable is that? Or, how profitable of a business can you run when your capacity has been cut down so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on a lot of factors, including like what your rent looks like. But the good news for us is like, as craft brewers, is own premise is really profitable. So I think that it's actually, and the other thing is, right, but between Monday and Thursday or so, we're usually not running at 100% occupancy. We're running at something pretty significantly below that. So where we really take our hit is on the weekends. But we're able to, I think we're generally able to run a good profitable business at those lower occupancy levels. It's not nearly what it was. It's not nearly what it could be. For us, we do a lot of private events in our barrel aged and sour facility that can be 500 person events. So those are obviously not coming back anytime soon. We do weddings almost one or two a weekend. So that's been a big hit to our business. But in terms of just the general tap room, as long as our guests and anyone out there who's a craft beer consumer, as long as our guests are tip well and generously, I would put a plug in for our team. That makes a huge difference to them. And generally, I think we can continue to run good profitable businesses. And I also think we're going to continue to see good, strong to-go business. So we plan to continue even after we open on the patio. We plan to continue doing drive-through, touchless pickup, contactless pickup, and ordering to go for the foreseeable future, because I think we want to respect the fact that people feel different levels of comfort. So there are multiple ways you can support your local craft brewery, is I guess the way I'm trying to say.
Chris, running at a limited occupancy, whenever you do open your doors back up, is it going to be able to sustain the business? Is it going to be able to be profitable?
I don't know. One is, right, check size is probably, dollars are more important than occupancy. So it depends on, if people come and they take some beer to go, if the check sizes go up, in theory, you could have a smaller occupancy. And that's something we've thought about. Obviously it plays into a number of factors in terms of staffing needs may not be as great. There's a million factors in it. Look, it's better than it's more than not being open. And it's the world that we have. And what I think about craft breweries in general, and ourselves included, is we've all had, most of us have dealt with like states that had really crazy rules and regulations. I mean, 3 years ago, we had to sell somebody a glass so that we could give them beer for free on a tour. We couldn't even sell a beer directly to a customer. We could be open 2 hours a day. And we figured out how to make it work. And then it got to where we could actually sell a tour, but still couldn't sell beer, but we could give it away if they came on a tour with their 6 samples up to 36 ounces. And we figured that out. And then we could sell beer, and we figured that out. And, I've kind of, what our staff is, this is like, we joke, this is, business model 3,720 in the 6 years that we've been open. And I think craft brewers are a resilient group of people that figure things out. I think it's a nature of who we are and what we are as an industry. And so, is it going to be what it once was? Probably not. Will we figure out a way to make it work? I'm really, really confident in the team of people. They have always figured it out. And unless the industry goes away, I suspect that Creature will figure out a way to survive in it. And that's, it may not be what it was, but I think we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
I think that's a great point, Chris. Like, craft brewers are by nature just scrappy, entrepreneurial, figure it out people. I mean, that's what I love about this industry. And this is one more chance for us as craft brewers to figure out how to adapt to a new changing landscape. And I think in some ways it's good that we're all in it together and we get to do things like this to share how things are going and what we're learning along the way. So we can all benefit from it. But in some ways, like, this is our DNA as craft brewers and entrepreneurs. We just get in there, we get our hands dirty, and we figure it out.
Can I add to that briefly, Jess?
Absolutely.
Sorry. So Jeff, you brought up a really good point about how people are looking to us for direction and what they're going to feel comfortable with. And I mean, that's hospitality. That's what we're in this industry for. Like, we're in the industry to facilitate a good time, to bring people joy and happiness. And they're going to understand when we're not experiencing that ourselves. So when we're experiencing pain and suffering, and they want to help as a whole. Like, we've seen that in troves across this industry for sure. And so I do feel like we owe them a responsibility. We're responsible for making sure that they don't over imbibe. We're responsible for making sure they have a good time, that they enjoy our facility, they enjoy our beer that we put so much hard work into. But not only that, they enjoy our people. And so I definitely feel that on a core level that hospitality is the core of craft beer. Not just can you brew a good beer, can you make a good beer, can you get a high score, but how do you treat your people? Not only the people that work for you, but the people that come and enjoy, and each other, and it shows. And I really appreciate that comment.
Libby, that's such a good point. Thinking about how the beer industry does come with this extra element of safety where we all need to make sure, when I say we, but like we're serving our guests safely, and you have to look out for that aspect. And this is just another layer on top of that.
Yeah.
We do have some great audience questions that came in. Jeff, specifically one for you. What's going on with your Birmingham location?
So we're for those who don't know, we've signed a lease to open a brew pub in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a couple hours from Atlanta, and we're continuing to move forward with that. The opening's been delayed by a few months, but we're at this point. Our current plan is we're looking at a late summer opening, which obviously there's the asterisk by everything with a timeline right now, which is and that might change. But the building's about ready, and we're been actually doing general manager interviews the last couple of days. So we're continuing to move forward with it, and we're also going to continue to keep an eye on how things are progressing in Birmingham and Alabama to make sure we feel comfortable that the same level of safety and that we can provide our guests here is true in Birmingham.
Great. I'm going to go through a few more audience questions. And if you are watching at home and want to submit a question, shoot a text to 617-336-8560. Chris, I know you mentioned switching from bar service to table service, which does make a lot of sense to spread out the guests throughout the room. So does that mean that you're going to have to hire more staff? And is that going to mean an increase in prices? What does this look like when you guys switch models?
It doesn't necessarily mean we'll have to hire more staff. So we keep a staff about 30 because we're also going to have a lot less tables. Trying to how tables we could fit with guests, keeping everyone 6 feet apart. And then when we open, we'll open with half of that. We need to ease ourselves into this as well. The only thing we know about our plan will be perfect. We know not going to be where we end up probably a week after we open. And so we need to give ourselves time to learn in an environment that's as safe as possible to learn. And we'll do run-throughs and everything like Bryce, but there'll be the day that we open our door and we'll learn something, immediately that first day, and we'll have to pivot and make a change. And you don't want to do that with a full house, so we have to ease ourselves into this. So we don't expect more staff. We've been able to keep all of us employed. So we had to let anyone go. Everyone's been able to. We took on paying all their tips, so we've been paying them 100% of their base pay plus the tips and their whatever hours they had averaged over the last 6 months. We just kind of made it basically more like a salaried position. Things will be different. We haven't had to lose any of that. We know they're all here. In helping us. We're not expecting to need more people at the moment based on.
All right, Chris is having some audio issues, it sounds like. We'll come back to him as soon as his connection can settle for a second. Sorry. But so another audience question that came through, Bryce, why don't we throw this one to you? In an effort to reduce the exchange of payments, have you considered exploring going cashless or mobile ordering app?
Yeah, so I think we're going to be very focused on cashless. I think we're going to advertise that. That's one of those things. We're not going to have any type of seating at our bar whatsoever. We're going to have a designated area for bar ordering. But one of the things we thought about is lines form. So there's multiple spots that are 6 feet apart that actually ordering would occur. And in each of that, we've got 2 very large lit sign boxes that are indicating that it is cashless. We do have a population of folks that are our regulars that I think will maybe show up and want to use cash because that might be the only payment method. I think we still are going to discourage it as much as possible, but we understand that might occur in those situations where people come in for the very first time. Again, we're not open yet, but we're just anticipating something like that could occur. Our locality requires gloves and obviously face protection to be worn. So with an exchange of cash, I think having the gloves on and easily being able to sanitize those gloves is an effective way also to keep that from any cross-contamination.
Great. Libby, what about you guys? Changing up payment methods, anything like that?
Sorry. We are completely cashless at this moment and plan on being cashless for the foreseeable future. We are going to make exceptions. Obviously, there are people that prefer not to use credit cards, and that will take every exception. We do have hand sanitizing stations set up outside both of our doors, behind our bar and our brewery, where we'll take every precaution to make sure that there is no contamination. But we currently offer everything to go in an online store. We're also investing in online to-go stations that will be disinfected, hopefully for every use. Alluding back to Chris's comment about how we don't know what to expect, we're hoping it won't be a giant influx. It will be a very steady flow that is manageable for our very small staff. And we plan on doing that to start through reservation only. Small groups can come at first, and that way we're able to allow them to order what they want through an app on an iPad. The bartenders will serve it, bring it to your table. We'll be able to disinfect that iPad afterwards. But beyond that, like, again, as everybody said, like, we're going to learn from it. We're going to have to pivot in some way, shape, or form. It's like you do when you open up any sort of business, when we open up this tap room. So that is our plan for now. But beyond that, there's obviously exceptions to any rule, but we're going to stand pretty hard on no cash unless it's an absolute must-need situation.
Cool. Chris, I see you nodding along. So I think your audio is probably a little bit better. So what are you guys doing? You're also going to go cashless?
Let me know if I'm better. Yeah. So we've been cashless, and our plan is really kind of when people enter to start their tab kind of as they enter, so they can swipe their card all on their own, and then we really don't have to deal, and so that we at least handle that on the front end. And then people, once their tab is started, we can take orders, they can place orders, but there's no more interchange that has to happen throughout the afternoon. So we would expect to be cashless as well. That's what we've been doing, and it's worked really well.
Jeff, this weekend you're planning to open up. We've established that, and there's a lot of things you can control with your business. You can control your operations, you can prepare your people, but the one thing you really can't control is consumer behavior. And so I got to ask, like, how do you plan for, I guess not policing, but how do you manage, a customer who may not be willing to wear a mask, or, someone who is inevitably going to talk to a stranger, or, any of those scenarios that, we've come to expect from brewery or bar experiences?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I don't feel like I can completely answer because we don't know yet. I think the tension is we're, as Libby said, we're in the hospitality business, and so the hospitality means you prioritize the guests, and this is a situation where we also have a responsibility to keep guests safe from each other and keep our staff safe from our guests. So I think that our approach is taking every precaution possible to and signage and spacing to really give cues to the guests about how we expect them to operate. So as an example, we're having someone, when you walk up to our tap room, there will be a greeter there at the at the entrance, and we'll give people an option to either find a seat, which are spaced out, and we actually have a few spots in our outdoor patio that are bar seats, but we've even put taped boxes onto the floor to sort of say, please stay within this range. So we're trying to give people every possible cue that we're taking this seriously, and that we're setting the expectation, not just by signage, but also personally up front with face-to-face contact, which I think is what we're all about, to set the expectations. My hope is that then our guests will respond to that and respect that. I expect that they will. I mean, generally we find that our guests, like, we live in a city, in a place where I think, and I think our survey was a good indicator that people are taking this seriously. So we're just going to have to learn as we go. And if for some reason we find out we can't operate safely, then we're gonna have to revisit being open at all. But I do feel confident that I have faith that our customers are taking this seriously enough, and we'll take the cues that we provide, that we'll be okay.
Libby, how do you strike the balance from being, I guess, policing your consumers to, providing them a hospitable environment?
There's a definite level of trust there. I feel like as a brewery that's been around this was our 10-year anniversary, which is super bummed, by the way, guys, that we're gonna have to cancel our beer fest. But there's a level of trust that you install into your employees and into the consumers, and if they break that trust, it's like somebody that over imbibes. You're going to have to, unfortunately, let them know that they're not welcome. Maybe please try again, but understand that we're setting these bounds for everybody's safety. So you don't drive home drunk because we can't overserve you. If you can't abide by our rules for social distancing, then we don't want you to get other people sick. Like, trying to make it equatable is basically how we're going to try to handle that in most part. But like, for in craft breweries in general, like, we don't see a rowdy crowd at all. We see people, like, craft breweries in general just see people that are looking to enjoy a fine beer, and they respect the establishment they're in for the most part. You always get those outliers, that 1%, but for the most part, I have a huge trust that people will understand and put trust into us that we're doing what is best for them, not just for us. So,
Chris, how are you viewing striking that balance?
Yeah, I mean, there's always expectations the customer has on us, and expectations we have of our guests. And I think the key thing is that everyone understands what those expectations are. And so, kind of to Jeff's point, how do we talk about that? How do we make it as clear as possible to everybody on the front end? So if they're not following the rules, we're able to say, hey, if you recall, we asked everyone to stay 6 feet apart, and you're not doing that, we're gonna have to ask you to leave. And I think it's exactly what Libby said. We get the question all the time, well, how do you deal with people getting drunk and this? I'm like, we really don't have much of an issue with that. That's not who comes to our brewery. It's not the environment that we've sought to create. There are other places for people to go do that. That's not the typical customer. And so I'm not envisioning a lot of challenges, but I certainly imagine the key is early communication up front, so everyone knows what the expectations are. They know what to expect of us and what we expect of them. And I think when you get the more clearly you communicate it, the more simple it is to enforce it. So that's kind of my biggest point on it.
Makes a lot of sense. We're getting down to the final countdown here. So if you do want to get a question in, shoot a text to 617-336-8560. Really interesting one here that I'm going to toss to Bryce, because I have looked on your website and you guys have a beautiful event space. So, I mean, how does the loss of things like event rentals, how is that affecting you right now?
It's pretty big, especially right now when we are coming into a good time of season for us. That's usually 15 to 20% potentially of our annual revenues that can come in from gross receipts perspective. It is really painful week by week that goes by when we have, the cancellation on top of the refund of deposit. Both those things have to happen, obviously. And it's just, you just see another month coming, and you saw those events that were there. We have people get married here. We have all sorts of events that always occur. And I think what's scary is we were booked for all of fall into December. We had a really big booking going. And now that all that's going to push potentially, or maybe stay, we have to adjust our business model. And I think that's something that we're talking about right now is, can people still have events 25 or below? And how do we adjust that business model so that's appropriate? And when could we do that? I'll say right now that I feel the pain financially, but the thing that I don't forget, and I know my events manager feels this as well, a lot of those things and a lot of those events that were going to happen were milestones in people's lives that aren't going to happen now in the same way that they hoped they would. So this might be the 50th birthday party. This might be the getaway wedding with all the family back here for a small gathering. This could have been a wedding. And I think that's probably one of the saddest parts about all of this is those missed opportunities for those special moments, the graduation party, or any of those things that is challenging all of us as a society right now. It's just changing our behaviors a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few weddings of friends canceled, so super sad. Speaking of kind of retooling and reconfiguring your business model, have you given any thought to adapting any of your significant annual releases or, you know, celebrations you would have had at the brewery, Libby, like your 10th anniversary, to making these digital events your take-home experiences? Bryce, we'll stick with you, but then I think we'll go around the room.
Yeah, I think actually what we've found is we've adapted the speed of release for us. So, you know, generally there's kind of a pattern that we establish where we're releasing in the tap room maybe a week early from a broader market release of a product, and we're only going to do that maybe once a month or once every so many months. And I think all of us have a seasonal release schedule of sorts that we follow. We've got standard releases that we have in plan. Well, now it's kind of the tables are turned a little bit when you need to proactively be connecting with the folks out there with maybe more releases. And I think that's something that we've done is we've gotten more proactive on more unique releases, and we're canning things that we've never canned before. We're not really an in-house, real focused canning brewery, and we've canned the most beer we've ever canned in our lives. We never thought our little 2-head cask canner would be able to kick out what it's doing today, but my staff is just doing an amazing job to hustle on it.
Great. Libby, are you guys going to do any kind of special celebration for the 10th anniversary? I know you had a festival planned, so that's not going to happen.
I don't know. That's been a really big source of heartbreak for me. And to be completely honest, I haven't want to dwell on it because it makes me kind of depressed. I do plan on doing something. We knew we were going to have to cancel it, but it was, do we postpone it till later this year? And as this continues to go on with our state reopening, I don't think that would be the responsible thing to do. So right now on my list of things to do is this week is pretty much plan on what we want to do. I don't envision some sort of special release outside of the, we did a massive collaboration beer a la Saint Somewhere for last year that we're going to release. And I don't know if I can cuss on here, but it's called Clusterfuck. It was 73 breweries coming together to brew just this ridiculous beer. And hopefully we'll be able to release that as some sort of homage to our beer fest and our anniversary. But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Like I said, I haven't been avoiding it, but it's just been a really big source of heartbreak for me.
Yeah. Oh, so sad. Chris, I know Creature does a lot of charitable fundraising, and you know, we talked a little bit about how this is your season of emphasis, but without taproom sales, things are a little different. So how have you guys been able to adapt your program?
Yeah, so the biggest thing we did is when we moved to going ahead and paying the staff for all of their hours plus tips, we took all the tips that were coming in and made those donations to our Get Comfortable fund. Normally at this time, we did a great collaboration with Allagash this year. That beer was just hitting the market, mostly keg driven when this went down. And so, you know, that we really didn't miss sort of a lot of the big fundraising. But that said, this has worked. You know, we've been able to raise a lot of money through the donations that have come through the drive-through. We've also put in a request out. Our Get Comfortable fund is about 40 plus businesses in Athens that pour into it now. And a bunch of people who could cut checks went ahead and cut them. And so we were able to cut a check to our nonprofit partners for about $130,000 right now, which is a critical time. Usually those payments go out in December. So, you know, there's been some ways, and obviously some businesses are doing better than others. And so in total, I think the fund will do okay. And we're trying to figure out if we can try to bring it back later in the year or how exactly, you know, we try to make it work. But it's been a bit of a downer, but at the same time, you know, we've really tried to stay as positive about things and as focused on solutions as we possibly can, not spend a whole lot of time dwelling on what we can't do and try to figure out what we can do. So.
Makes so much sense. Last audience question, Jeff, how have the federal and state ABC waivers on beer returns helped you, if at all?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate to have a good good conversations with our wholesale partners about this. It certainly will probably be a benefit. I think, you know, we weren't running super heavy on inventory with our wholesalers. We have a pretty limited distribution footprint in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. And so I think it's still a little TBD on what the total impact, every little bit helps, but honestly, I'd say it's helpful marginally. But the more important thing is just continue to maintain good relationships with our wholesalers so we can figure out like what the right approach is to managing any out of date beer and making sure that I'm more concerned, frankly, about just making sure that the quality of our beer is really high when things go back on draft. I don't want 6-month-old beer hanging out there. It's not a good look for our brand that we've worked so hard to protect.
Bryce, how about you guys? Is this something that you've taken advantage of or gotten any help out of?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us was a wait and see scenario about like when the reopening was going to happen. I think we will be taking advantage of that. Now that we have reopened, we're not sure from an inventory perspective what the wholesaler has on hand that might go out the door this weekend. We just reopened to all major bars as far as within the city. So we'll be interested to know kind of restocking and everything. I think we know that there's definitely a chunk of beer that we're going to be on the line for. We've had those discussions with the wholesalers. I think Jeff makes a good point. If you look to have a relationship going forward with your wholesaler, you're going to have to work through those things. I agree 100% that beer freshness is critical. It's a big balance for all of us. We've got a lot of product out there that's got a lot of money behind it, and we're trying to balance fresh beer and then sustaining operations. But I think we have to make all the right decisions for the success of the consumer to enjoy our product the way that we meant for it to be, and then as well as just to sustain our own operations. But I think the next 6 months is going to be a very trying time for everybody in the brewing industry, especially folks that distribute, because I think there's an unknown quantity of beer that's in the hands of restaurants and bars, as well as distributors, that we're all going to have to account for.
Libby, I saw you nodding along too. What are you guys doing with your partners on old beer?
Being completely forefront and honest when all of this started going down. I remember the day that we announced we closed March 15th. I immediately got on the phone with every single one of our wholesale partners and said, you need to be honest with me. You need to tell me what you cannot sell. You need to tell me what you can sell. Today was a really hard day. We had to dump. We're a smaller-ish brewery. I mean, this year I think we'll do 3,800 barrels, and we had to dump beer that had reached the 90-day threshold. We dumped about 8 pallets of beer, which I cried a lot, but I'm not willing to compromise, as Bryce says, as Jeff has reiterated, our commitment to putting out our best face. And putting out 6-month-old IPAs is not the best look for us because we have our standards. And talking to our wholesalers, understanding that the outstanding invoices that were open as far as this happened and when draft sales completely stopped, understanding that they don't have to pay that portion, that pay the portion that you were able to sell, we'll forgive the portion you weren't able to. And having a great relationship with wholesalers right now is so key, because when we open back up, you need to be the person they can trust the most to put beer into the hands of the people that want it. And so I definitely agree with that. It was heartbreaking, but it's the right thing to do. I mean, quality over quantity has been always kind of our mantra. And while it sucks, unfortunately, there's been some really great resources that have popped up through the Brewers Association as far as help with dumping of beer and recouping that cost. It's heartbreaking, but I mean, if you're not behind your beer, who are you? So.
Exactly. I mean, all that beer going down the drain does sound certainly very sad. I mean, Chris, what have you guys been doing with your wholesaler partners?
Yeah, so, similar, we reached out early. Freshness has been what we would probably say has been our number one sales driver. It's been kind of what we've hung our hat on the whole time as a brewery. So thankfully we tended to keep less than 7 days inventory at our wholesaler. So we didn't have a ton on the line. We pulled samples back of everything at their warehouse, whether it was out of date or in code or not, to run through our taste panel to basically say, look, if this was sitting in our warehouse today, would we ship it to them? And so for all of our hoppy stuff, we've just gone ahead and made the decision, which we ended up, because it was only probably 50 days old. We've swapped it all out. We've taken all of that back. I guess our view is this is kind of what got us here. And man, if I came out of quarantine essentially for my entire time, and the first beer I got at a bar wasn't to the level that I expected, that's just not it's not the experience that I would want, you know. And so we just sort of, you know, unfortunately, it's a big number, but it, you know, because we kept low inventory to begin with, it helped us out. And so yeah, we've just freshened up everything. We've just sort of said, so we didn't have a whole lot of out of date product to really talk to. It was just, and some of our stuff like lagers that are 45 days, we put them through panel and they passed very well, you know. And so we said, okay, look, that's not it. But so our hoppy stuff, if we said we wouldn't ship it out today if that was our, you know, desired thing. We kind of bit the bullet. And to Libby's point, it's a tough day. And you know, what we told our team is like, we just have to extract the most out of this that we can, and like, let's hang our hat and let's remember this day as like a proud day, where it was like, hey, we put somebody else, we put the customer first, and we put our beer and the quality of the beer first. And you know, you try to get it the most, you know, that this is why it's important that we keep low inventory at distributors, you know, and we risk out of stock so that we can ensure that customers get fresh beer. And it helped us out in this scenario because we didn't have 40, 50 days to write off.
Damn. That I think that's what's making me hopeful, and that's these answers that you guys just gave, and that's where I want to bring it back to and sort of leave it here. We're running overtime, so I appreciate you all taking the time out. But before we wrap up, we'll go lightning round here. What's one thing that's keeping you guys up at night, and what's one thing that's making you hopeful right now? And I'll start with Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, keeping me up at night is a second wave. All right, the thing that we open back up, things feel good, and then we get hit again. So that's certainly something that's a concern. What am I hopeful about? I'm really hopeful about our team and our consumers. I think people. I think that's the thing that our purpose at Monday Night is to deepen relationships. The best beer in the country, and I think people are going to be the thing that make us come out of this stronger. I've just been really encouraged how our team and our consumers have responded to this crisis.
Bryce, what's one thing that's keeping you up and one thing that's making you hopeful?
I'm going to agree with Jeff on, I think the second wave and my team's safety is probably one of the biggest things that I'm very, very nervous about, not knowing that. And then hopeful, I think it's the opportunity that we see people picking up beer and enjoying beer and talking to us on social media and being excited to come back and just hoist a pint with us again means that people still have happiness out there. I mean, so many days, all we hear is gloom and doom, it seems like anymore. And when we can still crack a beer and find a little relaxation, I think that's one of the best things, that the simple thing in life that we can still have.
Chris, what's keeping you up? What's making you hopeful?
Yep, I'm staying up, worried about sort of how long this lasts or what the recovery looks like. And, you know, it's the challenge is it's extremely difficult to predict what our business, like when the business might return, or even like forecast 30 days out. And so I think that's really hard. And kind of like the others, I'm really hopeful by the resilience I've seen in our team and staying sort of super solution oriented. And honestly, there's a lot of things that are going to come out of this for us, whether that's doing, you know, Instagram tours or visitation, Instagram live with other breweries, that it's like, man, we could have always been doing this and we just haven't. There are some tools that we've seen our ability to connect to consumers much further away. We used to be, I think, very focused on how we connect with them inside the four walls. And this has forced us to think about how to connect with consumers outside of our four walls. And so I think that's been, you know, there's some wins that are coming out of this in terms of that. And just seeing the way that our team has responded has been unbelievable. But yeah, just, you know, how long, if this is just a total new world, or is it going to go back? You know, the uncertainty is tough.
Yeah. Libby, we'll give you the last word here on this question.
What keeps me up at night is my staff, worrying about them. I mean, they're critical to, they're the face of our brewery, making sure that they're cared for. It ties into the second wind of the virus, not knowing after our PPP funds run out, whether they're going to be taken care of. And I've done a really good job, I think, of securing that for them afterwards, but making sure that they know that they have a home here. And just what keeps me up is making sure that our business stays, making sure that I'm keeping on top of things. And what gives me hope is we're seeing things that used to divide us bring us together as an industry, whether it be micro, macro, anywhere in between, hard seltzer. I mean, all of that petty, forgive my language, but all that petty bullshit is kind of all fallen aside, and we're all kind of here to support each other. You're seeing big guys help small guys. You're seeing small guys help small guys. You see people that had animosity toward each other. And granted, this is mostly on social media. Like, it's gone away. Like, there's something bigger than us right now that we all need to kind of come together for and make sure that as many of us survive this as possible. And that's given me a lot of hope.
I think that's the perfect way to end this. I can't thank the four of you enough for taking time out to join us. Also, I can't thank all of you enough for tuning in and spending an hour plus with us, hour, 10 minutes right now. Jess, before we get out of here, could you please plug next week?
Yeah, so next week we are going to be talking all about e-commerce, which is taking off. We have a few VIP guests in the category. We have the team from Rabobank, the host of the beverage podcast, Ricard Nesset and Jim Watson. We also have Drizzly's Director of Consumer Insights, Liz Paquette, who sat down with me for a video, what feels like 5 years ago now, but you can find it on brewbound.com. And also GoPuff's Director of Alcohol, Randy Ornstein. We're going to talk all about e-commerce trends and opportunities during COVID-19. So join us next Thursday, 3 o'clock Eastern. Join us then. That's right. Brewbound.com. We'll be here every Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all one more time. Thanks to Jess. Thanks to our AV team, audio team, all of you. We're out of here. Cheers.